condyles, right?
Just like an alcohol explode.
What's that?
Just like an alcohol.
Okay, let's jump to this stuff over here. So this is called the sternum. This is called the manubrium. This is the sternal body. This is the xiphoid process. Right. When you do CPR, do you put your hands anywhere?
You put 2 fingers on the xiphoid process.
And then you put your hand here, right? And you're doing that for 2 reasons. One, so that you don't push on the xiphoid process, and the other, why?
To say you did it.
So you did it. So you don't just put your hands randomly on the ribs either, so you don't crack the ribs, right? You may crack them during the CPR, but you're at least trying to minimize the damage that you're going to do by pushing on that sternum. So you're pushing down here on the body of that sternum. What happens if you crack a rib?
You keep going.
You keep going. What happens if you break that? Yeah, keep going, right? Because they're already dead. All right, so this first rib is coming in here and it's articulating with what?
The manubrium.
The manubrium, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are called what?
True ribs.
True ribs. Why are they called true ribs?
Because they articulate.
They connect the sternum.
They have their own little connection, right? Their own one-to-one connection with this brown stuff. What's this brown stuff called?
Costal cartilage.
Costal cartilage. What is costal Latin for? Rib, right? Rib cartilage. And then after 7, we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and those are called false, right? Those last 2 are called
Floating.
Ribs, right? Why are they called false?
Because they fuse with the...
They fuse on their way in, right? Okay, so then okay, I guess we'll let me just do this. What's this brown stuff called? Costal cartilage, and this is again the
Manubrium, sternum, xiphoid process.
Okay, now the manubrium is going to be a point of attachment between the axial and the appendicular skeleton. What bone is going to be mediating that?
Clavicle.
The clavicle, right? So at the is it the distal or proximal end of the clavicle that's articulating with the manubrium? Proximal end, and the distal end is then articulating with the
Scapula.
Scapula. What part of the scapula is it articulating with? The acromion. What's the name of this joint then? Acromioclavicular joint, right? So then the scapula has this kind of a hole here, or a fossa, or cavity. That's the glenoid cavity, right? What bone's going to fit in that glenoid cavity? The head of the humerus, right? So the humerus will go into that. What's the name of that joint?
Glenohumeral.
Glenohumeral joint, right? So the glenohumeral joint is going to have this humerus attached to it, and then the humerus has 2 bones attached to it on the distal end, and they are called the radius and ulna. When you're in the anatomical position, which one is under? Ulna, and so the radius must be on top. So the radius is sitting here, and it's going to articulate with the humerus at what point? At the capitulum, right? You have that radial head, and it's going to roll over this capitulum here. The ulna is going to be a very stable type of joint. What kind of joint is this? Hinge joint, right? You see how it just moves up and back like this. So when the arm is in the extended position, then what? Well, actually, first tell me what's the name of that big bump here on the back of the humerus? The olecranon, right? And the olecranon is going to be in what fossa when the arm is in the extended position? The what? Olecranon fossa. And when the arm is flexed, it's going to be in the cornoid fossa, right? So then you have the ulnar radius comes down here. There's a membrane that's going to be binding these 2 together. What's the name of that membrane? Interosseous membrane, right? We have these bumps here, these prominent bumps that look like you could break your hand off and stab somebody in the neck with. These little bumps are called what? These guys are wasting their battery. Somebody help them out.
I got it.
It can be really painful to watch. Somebody's got to look it up. What are these 2 little bumps called? You can feel them on your wrist. Say it? Styloid processes, right? Styloid processes, you're going to have ligaments there attaching the hand so that the ulna and the radius are articulating with which bones? The carpal bones, right? The carpal bones are going to give us that wide range of motion in our wrist, and they're going to be articulating with which bones? The metacarpals are articulating with the.
Phalanges.
How many phalanges do we have in our fingers? 3. And how many in our thumb?
2.
What's the name of our thumb? The pollex?
Hollow.
Pollex? Ooh, damn. Huh? What is it?
Holics.
It's the holics.
No, it's
Yeah,
hollow.
it's a holic.
See, look, hollow.
The toe is something with a P.
If only anybody had a textbook or notes.
No, I have. The thumb is the pollux.
The thumb is the pollex.
Yeah. No.
I don't think
I don't
so.
know actually.
I think it's H.
Thumb is the pollux.
I know.
Holics.
Look at that.
Pollex.
What is the thumb?
Holics.
Holler. Right? Okay. So then,
Hollow your foot.
okay, so now let's get back to the scapula. If you feel on the back of your shoulder, you can feel this prominent process there that's called the. This is called a. It's a ridge. It would be called a spine, right? Above the spine, there's a fossa here. What would that be called? It's above. Supraspinatus fossa, right? And below it would be the infraspinatus, right? So when we get to the muscles, we're going to have the supraspinatus muscle. Where's that one going to attach? Yeah, right, up here, and the infraspinatus will attach down here. So then, good. So the okay, let's jump down here. So we have the axial skeleton. Contacting these bones off to the side over here, which are going to be part of the appendicular skeleton. These bones are called the coxa bones, right? What makes up the coxa bones? Which 3 bones make that up?
Ilium.
Ilium, ischium, and the pubis, right? So which one am I touching here? The ilium. Which one am I touching here? Ischium. And which one am I touching here? Pubis. And the pubis bones are connected by this thing called the pubic symphysis, which is made out of.
Cartilage.
Yeah, fiber cartilage, right? What's that hole called? No, this hole.
Something kind of
It's a foramen. What's the name of it? Yes. What'd you say? Obturator foramen, right? The obturator foramen. When you're sitting, you're bearing your weight on this process here called the ischial
crest.
tuberosities, right? The ischial tuberosities when you're sitting there. That obturator is going to help hold a bunch of these hip muscles there. All right, now these 3 bones are all going to fuse at one point, and the area that they fuse in is called what?
Acetabulum.
The acetabulum. And what bone's going to fit into the acetabulum?
The head of the femur.
The head of the femur is going to go into the acetabulum, right? So then we have the head of the femur here. We have this big bulge. What's this big bulge called? Greater trochanter, right? And then we follow the femur down, and then we have a bone here in front of it. What's that called?
Patella.
The patella. What kind of bone is that? Sesamoid. What's the definition of a sesamoid bone? Where they develop?
At the joints.
In the joints, behind tendons there, right? So we'll have a tendon up here, a tendon down here. What's the tendon down here called?
Patellar tendon.
The patellar tendon. What's the one up here called? It's named after the group of muscles that are in the front of the leg.
Quadriceps.
Hmm?
Nothing.
No. Here. What?
Quadriceps.
Yeah, quadriceps tendon. All right. Okay, so then
Quadricep
tendon.
tendon.
Right. And then we have the weight of the femur coming down onto this big bone. This big bone is called the
Fibula.
tibia. The tibia has an articulation over here that's a slightly moving articulation. What's the name of a slightly moving articulation?
Amphiarthrosis.
Amphiarthrosis, right? And that articulation is with this bone called the
Fibula.
the fibula. The fibula is that a weight-bearing bone? No. It's going to have a lot of muscle attachment on it, though, right? That's going to be coming down onto the foot, and it's going to be they're going to be articulating with what bone on the foot? The talus, right? The talus is then going to be articulating to the back with the calcaneus. The calcaneus is going to be articulating forward with the
Tarsals.
what's the name of this one?
Oh, it's got a special name. Coronoid.
It's shaped like a cube.
Cuboidal.
Cuboid.